نسل رپ قسمت 36. یکی از اهداف برنامه نسل رپ همواره آشنا کردن شما با هیپ هاپ واقعی و خاستگاه اون بوده. از این رو تصمیم گرفتیم تا مستند هیپ هاپ فراتر از قافیه و ضرب آهنگ با ترجمه و زیرنویس بهرام نورایی رو به عنوان یکی از قدم‌های این مسیر براتون پخش کنیم. اما قبل از هر چیزی باید به این اشاره کنم که تماشای این برنامه برای افراد زیر 18 سال توصیه نمیشه. از اونجایی که زمان این مستند بیشتر از زمان برنامه نسل رپه، تصمیم گرفتیم تا در 2 قسمت این مستند رو براتون پخش کنیم. این فیلم به کارگردانی بایرن هارت در سال 2006 ساخته شده و فرهنگ هیپ هاپ در آمریکا رو از 3 زاویه زن ستیزی، خشونت و همجنسگرا هراسی مورد بحث و انتقاد قرار میده.
Something as familiar as the back of your hand, and then someone turns it upside down and you see it for the first time again. Welcome to Independent Lens. Welcome to Independent Lens. I'm Terrence Howard, your host. You see, all his life, Byron Hurt thought that he knew what was necessary to be a real man in America. He was a college football star, a ladies' man, and a guy who loved hip-hop music. Well, now Byron's an independent producer. He still loves the music, but he's got some serious questions for the industry and all of us who listen to hip-hop music.
Black death, whether it's through film, whether it's just through news, is the bottom line. In the black, no pun intended, money maker. Black death has been pimped by corporations.
You see, this is a one-of-a-kind experience, watching Byron get real with some of the biggest names in hip-hop. So there's violence, misogyny, and homophobia. Is that the way hip-hop's gotta really be? Hip-hop, beyond beats and rhymes. Next on Independent Lens.
One thing I really want to say, and I want to make this very clear to all my viewers out there. I love hip-hop. I grew up with Big Daddy Kane, you know, the Jungle Brothers, Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, Kwame, whoever you want to talk about in hip-hop. I listen to their music, I party to their music, I listen to hip-hop to this day. I sometimes feel bad for criticizing hip-hop, but I guess what I'm trying to do is to get us men to just take a hard look at ourselves. We're like in this box. In order to be in that box, you have to be strong, you have to be tough, you have to have a lot of girls, you gotta have money, you gotta be a player or a pimp, you know, you gotta be in control, you have to dominate other men, other people. You know, if you're not any of those things, then, you know, people call you soft or weak or a chump, and nobody wants to be any of those things. So everybody stays inside the box.
Before hip-hop, men were seen in R&B, they was like very docile, you know what I mean? But when hip-hop came around, it brought masculinity back into the game. Now some of it is a little misguided.
Through rap music, I think there's an identification with some of the most stereotypical masculine standards.
Every black man that goes in the studio, he's always got 2 people in his head. Him, in terms of who he really is, and the thug that he feels he has to project. It's a prison for us.
Yo, I'm this, I'm that, I'm toting it. You know you ain't doing jack. But at the end of the day, you know you can make somebody believe that you are. It could be profitable.
I jokingly say that I'm in recovery from hip-hop. It's like being in a domestic violence situation. Your home is hip-hop and your man beats you.
D12 ain't all about just smacking bitch and smacking hoes, but we will smack a bitch and smack a hoe. Yeah, yeah.
We the kings. We the kings, man. We the kings of this.
Buyern hurt the throw. He's under pressure. He's going to run. He's going to throw. In the end zone. Complete.
One of the best things I've ever been able to do in my life was to throw a football. I was nice with mine. Before games, I would listen to hip-hop to get psyched up. LL Cool J's Mama Said Knock You Out usually got me ready to play.
I grew up like a typical boy in America.
I was a star high school and college quarterback, a ladies' man, and a Q-dog who listened and partied to a whole lot of hip-hop without really questioning the lyrics I was listening to. Rap music's lyrics and images fell right in line with my masculine identity.
I was that guy. That's who I was.
And then, my whole life changed. When I graduated from college, I was hired by Northeastern University's Sport and Society to educate young men about men's violence against women. They figured boys and men would listen to an ex-jock like me.
When I was that age, nobody came into my high school and talked to me about men's violence against women, especially men.
When I first started doing it, I didn't really know much about gender issues, anything like that. I was totally intimidated and totally unaware about like what I could do as a man to change any of that stuff. But I started learning a whole lot about masculinity, and I became very introspective about my own self as a man. Every time I do a discussion or group, rap music always comes up. People say, well, what about hip-hop? You know, hip-hop is so violent. Hip-hop is so misogynistic. Hip-hop is always, bashing gays or whatever. And I would always defend hip-hop. But the more I grew and the more I learned about sexism and violence and homophobia, the more those lyrics became unacceptable to me. And I began to, become very conflicted about the music that I loved. One day I was just sitting home at the crib watching music videos. And I was seeing video after video after video of rappers posing and posturing, throwing money at the camera, mad women around them dancing. And I was like, yo, I need to do a film that breaks all of this stuff down.
So I raised money, bought a video camera, hired a film crew, and began my journey to examine the representations of manhood in hip-hop culture. My first stop was Daytona Beach, Florida, at BET's annual Spring Bling weekend. Young hip-hop fans from all over the country were here to hang out and watch their favorite rap artists perform. I had a different agenda. I was here looking for young men and women to talk to about the way manhood is displayed in hip-hop culture. Yo, I felt like I was in the middle of a real live music video. On my first day here, I ran into these aspiring rap artists.
When it's time to go to war, I come equipped with the gauge and the tech. Infect flesh like a syphilis plague in case a Nicolas Cage wanna take it for granted. Try to face off, get taken off the face of the planet.
Look, prick, you ain't never bust a 9 before. You dicks turn in the when it's time for war. When the shells hit they body, I show them who that bastard be. Ask my down-ass niggas, will you blast for me?
Keep talking about your guns, how you kill dudes for practice, lying. Only thing you ever popped was aspirins.
All they seemed to rhyme about was gunplay, killing other men, being tough and invulnerable, feminizing other men, and putting fear into another man's heart. Why are so many rappers preoccupied with violence and gunplay?
Woke up this morning. Yeah. You got yourself a gun. Yeah. Got yourself a gun. I'm living in this time behind.
When you think about American society, the notion of violent masculinity is at the heart of American identity. So that the preoccupation with Jesse James and the outlaw, the rebel, much of that is associated in the American mindset, the collective imagination of the nation, with the expansion of the frontier. And in the history of American social imagination, the violent man using the gun to defend his family, his kith and kin, becomes the suitable metaphor for the notion of manhood.
Make it fast, Slippery. This is your last draw.
got mine, I hope
You know, there are components to masculinity for the people who live and breathe hip-hop culture. One of them is verbal ability. And two, the second piece here is the ability to negotiate violence.
We both came up on the gritty streets of Jamaica, Queens. 2 street kids, now men.
I thought about 50 Cent's music video, Many Men. In this video, he reenacts the day he survived a drive-by shooting where he was shot 9 times.
Many men wish death upon me. Blood in my eye, dog, and I can't see. I'm trying to be what I'm destined to be, and trying to take my life away.
Just draw up the image of Public Enemy's logo, where you have a black male figure in a scope, in the sights of a gun. And there's a way in which that is what we are navigating as black men in the inner city.
People gotta understand that hip-hop was really created in the ghettos, you know, poor black Americans, poor West Indians, and poor Puerto Ricans. Places like the South Bronx, you know, the West Bronx, where, you know, Bambaataa and Herc and these folks are throwing parties, they were considered like war zones.
South Bronx, the South Bronx.
Beginning in 1946 and ending in 1963, the construction of the Cross Bronx Expressway ripped the Bronx in half. Urban planners and developers led by Robert Moses showed little concern for the people who lived in the borough and displaced thousands of residents and small business owners, leaving in its wake a poor, devastated community with little outside help from politicians.
The mainstream media would call it Fort Apache, you know what I'm saying? People were terrified to go in the Bronx, or you might go in, but you're not gonna come out. They called it the Bronx Zoo, and the Bronx Zoo literally became the metaphor for the whole borough. I mean, and you know, that's horrible because they were talking about black and Latino people. All of that fed into what was becoming hip hop.
The culture and the energy that came from that was a very improvisational energy, a very sort of reclaiming energy that young folks, through dance, through rapping and DJing and so on and so forth, that is how the culture took hold. It was a willed response to systematic violence in the community. And when I say violence, I mean like destroying homes. Imagine someone putting a highway through your neighborhood. Then you can understand hip hop.
I decided to go to the Bronx, the birthplace of hip hop. I talked to the reigning king of the boogie down, Fat Joe. I wanted to ask Fat Joe, why is it so important to be hard in hip hop?
But it is to be hard. Everybody wants to be hard, and this is one of the things I told you, one of the flaws in like being from the hood. Like everybody wants to be hard. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that. You see people forget Fat Joe because you see other people just grab the mic and they transform into a whole different person. Or when they walking around the club, I'm wondering why we can't just walk around and smile at each other. Why are we all there to do the same thing, have a nice time, party and get drunk and enjoy the music, but we all looking at everybody like, and this be writers, journalists like you know, it'd be good people working who be up in the club like, I'm saying it's something, I don't even know. I can't answer that.
The reason why braggadocio and boast is so central to the history of hip hop is because you're dealing with the history of black men in America. And there's a whole lineage of black men wanting to deny their own frailty. And so in some ways you have to do that, you know, like a psychic armor in order to walk out into the world every day. But the other side of it is like, it's kind of a running inside joke that everyone knows, you know, that is not the case.
I'm doing my hardcore pose, homie.
Word.
You know what I'm saying?
All right.
Yeah, we tough, dude.
Most lean in this way a little more to the light.
I'm gonna
feel a light
gun
on you.
position and everything.
There you go.
Cause we gangsters, son.
It feels like a show.
You know what I'm saying? Word. We hustlers and all of that. We duct tape families, dude.
At a recording session in New York City, I met up with Busta Rhymes, Mos Def, Talib Kweli, and De La Soul. I told them about the young rappers I had met back in Daytona, and we discussed why so many rappers project an image of toughness and invulnerability in hip-hop.
I think that's just a part of every man's life, you know? Every man wants respect, you know? You don't want nobody taking you for short. And that's what it be.
Hip-hop is very
driven thing, and you know, it just, you know, it encourages you to assert yourself. You know what I'm saying? And as a man, especially a black man in this society, you have to learn how to do that.
I was a nerd. I was a bookworm around the way, but when it got critical, you know, you can't be no punk. That's just for, you know, I know how a lot of young black men is growing up, how I grew up. So it's like, you can't let nobody just, you gotta be a limit. You gotta let niggas know, like, yo, I'm no. And you will get tested.
I was from East Flatbush, Brooklyn. I thought Long Island was soft. My mom's told me we had to go. I was vexed. I ain't even gonna front. I got to Long Island, I saw flower beds and the newspaper boy in the morning. You know, I saw dew on the grass when I came outside. I ain't never seen a BK, nigga. You know what I'm saying? So that type to me was just a lot more intimate than Brooklyn. So at the end of the day, I just felt like this would dilute my rough and tough edge. And
we're playing a role from the time we're 7 years old. We walk down the street in the neighborhood and somebody calls us a sister, a sucker, church boy. Then we start playing that role. When I see young fathers with their children, I'm always happy. But when I see them, you know, punch their child in the chest and say, nigga, you got to be ready for this.
Streets, the cops, the system, harassment, the options, get shot, go to jail, or get shot. The lawyers, the part, they are of the puzzle, the release, the warning, try not to get in trouble.
I just think in general, our society limits the range in which men can express their emotions.
I told it, I ain't never
You just have to have your game face on all the time. Like, you can't cry in front of your boy. You just can't do it.
If you're a young man growing up in this culture, and the culture is telling you that being a man means being powerful, being dominant, being in control, having the respect of your peers, but you don't have a lot of real power, well, one thing that you do have access to is your body and your ability to present yourself, you know, physically as somebody who's worthy of respect. And I think that's one of the things that accounts for a lot of the hypermasculine posturing by a lot of young men of color and a lot of working class white guys as well. Men who have more power, men who have financial power and workplace authority and forms of abstract power like that don't have to be as physically powerful because they can exert their power in other ways.
The hardness that you're talking about was accelerated as the stuff that was happening during the Reagan-Bush era really was taking place. The whole crack thing, proliferation of guns, a lot of us going up to prison, you know what I mean? And you got to be hard within the context of prison. And then a lot of the mentalities that you see come out of, you know, these forced environments, the gang environment, the prison environment. Sooner or later, all the stuff that you saw happening in the streets was going to begin to be reflected in the music and the culture.
Hey, yo, I'm living a life, and I'm loving every bit of it. Y'all niggas started, but we gon' finish it. Yeah. Mac with extended clips, clap at the innocent, clap at the bystanders, clap at the witnesses. You can always find me flipping bricks in the kitchen, and my connect so real, I get it in prison.
Where you from, Harlem Streets, dog? I'm from the FL. I'll punch you in your brain and make your swell. White me, nigga, I run the street, nigga, come on.
The dominant image of black masculinity in hip hop is the fact that somebody can be confrontational, but confrontational with the wrong cat. It's like they're not ever confrontational with the cats that will claim, like, you know, I'll wipe your whole neighborhood out, because they're almost like they're trained not to even see them. It's like my beef is with this cat right here that looks just like me. The rise of the culture of black animosity is something that adds to the street credibility factor. It's like almost to the point where Tupac and Biggie were used as martyrs for this new endorsement of black animosity.
I asked rapper Jadakiss about his and other rappers' nonchalance about violent hip-hop lyrics.
Sometimes, man, when I'm listening to you, it seems like it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? It sounds like y'all are desensitized to violence. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you talk about killing brothers like it ain't nothing. You know what I'm saying? And not just you, but a lot of brothers. You know what I'm saying?
Do you watch movies? What kind of movies do you watch?
Good question. I mean, if you watch Hollywood movies, you see this same kind of violence, this same kind of hyper-masculine violence perpetuated in movie after movie after movie. In sports culture, video games, in military culture. I mean, America is a very hyper-masculine, hyper-aggressive nation.
We're gonna smoke them out.
So it stands to reason that a rapper like 50 Cent can be commercially viable in a nation that supports a culture of violence.
We live in a society, man, where manhood is all about conquering and violence, man, all the time. And what we don't realize, that kind of definition of manhood ultimately destroys you.
Niggas in my faction don't like asking questions. Strictly gun testing, coke measuring, giving pleasure in the Benzito, hitting pennies, spending chips at Manny's. Hope you creeps got receipts. My peeps get dirty like cleats. Run up in your crib, wrap you in your polo sheets. Six up in your real piece. This nigga deceased. Why? May you rest in peace. You're nobody till somebody kills you.
We, as a community, challenge this notion that it's okay for black males to die early, that this is a natural part of life, killing, shooting, dying, wearing bulletproof vests, talking crazy as though your life doesn't really mean anything. This is sickness.
Killing is always there since the beginning of time. You know, a lot of it is exaggerated, but just based on a true story, I guess. You feel me? I don't know what it is.
The national story is Black Death. And Black Death, whether it's through film, whether it's through recordings, whether it's just through news, is the bottom line in the black, no pun intended, moneymaker. Black Death has been pimped by corporations, and young people think that the street credibility is a thing that will ride them to some kind of profitability in life.
That's all we need, baby. One for the house. Oh, come on. Pimp juice.
This is Nelly. He's a multi-platinum rap artist and a successful businessman. He's a huge rap star who's also known for giving back to the community. His two nonprofit organizations promote literacy and locate bone marrow donors for leukemia patients. Oh, and by the way, did I forget to mention that he also owns a beverage called Pimp Juice? Well, anyway, in the spring of 2004, Nelly wanted to go to Spelman College to help save some lives. Instead, he was met with resistance by the women of Spelman. I went down to Atlanta to find out what happened.
New at 10, a controversy surrounding rap artist Nelly led to an emotional meeting at Spelman College tonight. The discussion focused on hip-hop videos and how they portray women.
The St. Louis-based rapper decided not to appear at a bone marrow drive his foundation organized at Spelman after some students threatened to protest because of an explicit video called Tip Drill. In the video, Nelly is seen swiping his credit card down a woman's backside.
I was very, very bothered, to say the least, about the video. And I was in moral conflict on whether or not to cancel the drive since I was the coordinator, or if just to disinvite Nelly.
We decided that what we'll do is that we can have the bone marrow, and he can come for that. But then after the bone marrow, then we need to have a forum that addresses these issues.
We gave Nelly and his foundation the option to address both issues, saving lives physically and saving lives mentally, and they pulled out. So I was very disappointed.
For them to say, we want to come to your campus and have a bone marrow drive, but we don't want to hear your opinions about the music that we produce and the image that we're proliferating is like the equivalent of saying, just shut up and give me your bone marrow.
I said it must be ass, cause it ain't your face. I need a
One of the disappointing things about Tip Drill and that whole genre of music videos is that they have taken a view of women of color that's not radically different from the views of 19th century white slaveholders.
The image of scantily clad women is supposed to affirm some image of masculinity, the man as the Mac, as this, sexually powerful, virile example of manhood. But in actuality, what they show themselves to be is incredibly insecure. And the idea is this man is so important and so powerful, and these women, conversely, are so dime a dozen, or I guess a dime for 2 dozen, you know, if there's 24 women standing around, that they don't matter, they're just eye candy, they're worthless.
I'm torn, you know, to be honest, because I have to be real with the way that I've been socialized as a man and what my initial reaction is to Tip Drill or to any other video. To look at these images, be excited by these images, be turned on by these images, etc.
Hip-hop culture is not separate from the rest of American culture. I mean, objectified, female bodies, those images are everywhere as well. Those images are in advertising, those images are in movies, those images are in TV programs. The really negative thing about music videos and about advertising is that that is the only way in which women are presented. And so the only way in which men are allowed to make a connection in the popular culture with women is through sexuality, and it's only through their own desires.
I think black men have internalized the messages that this culture perpetuates, which is that women are primarily sex objects and people to be. And I think that it is that kind of message and those kind of images that we want to try to disrupt.
I caught up with hip-hop mogul Russell Simmons at this hip-hop summit in Detroit and asked him about the Spelman controversy.
I went down to Spelman College where the women at Spelman were protesting against Nelly and his Tip Drill video because he swiped her.
I tried the pimp juice and I thought it tasted very good.
But how do you respond to the women at Spelman? No, how do you respond to the women at Spelman who are speaking up and who are challenging the images in rap music videos where women are being sexually objectified and all of those different things? In particular,
I think we have to challenge sexism as a whole, as the way it stands in the community, not the poetry. That's a reflection of it.
What are you doing personally as a political force?
I can only do as many things as God has given me great opportunity to do. I can't address every issue because I don't have the equipment. I'm trying to figure out what special contributions I can make and make those.
Generally speaking, black people do not believe that misogyny and sexism and violence against women are urgent issues. We still think that racism, police brutality, black male incarceration are the issues that we should be concerned about.
If we have a glorified sense of our own victimization as black and brown men, what we must not miss, and what we often do, is to understand that black and brown women themselves are so victimized, not only by white patriarchy, but by black male supremacy and by the violence of masculinity that's directed toward them.
I said it must be ass, cause it ain't your face. I need a tip drill, point out where she at, point out where she at, point out. Now she goes. Let me see a tip drill, point out where she at, point out where she at, point out. Now she goes. Come on, girl, you know what we came here for. Was you a tip drill? We need a tip drill. I said, now come on, girl, you know what we came here for.
اما با ما تنها از طریق صفحه فیسبوک نسل رپ و ایمیل naslerapco@gmail.com در ارتباط باشید.